What's up, everybody? This is your boy Notes 215. Welcome to my second episode of my KillaKicks podcast. This is something that I'm starting to do. As you know, in my last podcast, I had a very special guest, Dallas Penn, and that was pretty exciting, man. I definitely appreciate everybody that showed support for that. And this podcast is going to be pretty good. Very good podcast. The two interviews that I have today are pre-recorded, so it just takes a lot, man, to get together with people and have a thorough discussion, man. Some of these people are very, very busy, so I have to do a lot on my end to make this stuff happen. So the first interview that you're about to hear is with a friend of mine's, my homie RJ. He's very heavy into 3D printing. In case if you knew or may not know, Adidas made a prototype shoe with a 3D with a three. Why the fuck can I say 3D correctly? It's like 3D shit. 3D printing. So there you go. 3D printing sole, and it's a prototype. They really don't have any dates or anything like that as far as when the shoe's gonna release. But Adidas is making a lot of power moves, man. Just reading yesterday, ASAP Ferg just joined the Adidas team. Whoa. He's actually dropping a shoe in December, which I really, really, really like. And I'm happy that it's ASAP Ferg, to be honest. I actually enjoy ASAP Ferg more than ASAP Rocky. I just don't know what it is. It's just something about his style and the way that, it's just that typical Harlem shit. Harlem dudes is very, very, very creative, man, and they're very likable. It's like once they get on the scene, it's hard not to like a Harlem MC, in my opinion. But out of the whole ASAP crew, I would say that Ferg is one of my favorite, and he's very fashion savvy, if you ask me. Just by the stuff that you see him wearing in the videos, and you know, uh, just the way that you see him like put together his outfits, like you could tell that he's very into the culture. So um, the shoes that he actually has, I can't wait to actually buy it. And the merch is stupid. I saw the pictures yesterday. The long sleeve shirt that he had was was freaking dope. So I'm pretty excited in the direction that Adidas is heading. And I will say this, man. I just hope that they keep on heading in that same direction, man. I just hope that they keep on getting, MCs. Like I actually hope to see Kendrick Lamar like in Adidas. Um, but he's on Reebok, so I mean it is what it is. But I definitely want to see Adidas uh giving young MCs that platform, to just create and make dope products. I think somebody that will probably be next in line will probably be like a Travis Scott or something like that. That's just my opinion. I mean, that's not set in stone, but maybe a Travis Scott, shit, man. There's a couple underground MCs, that I could see definitely jumping on Adidas, company, and just being able to create, and making dope products, which is a good look for Adidas. So we're going to be talking about the 3D printing. As I said, I'm not even going to talk too much anymore about it because I don't want to kind of like repeat myself on certain things that I said in this recording that you're about to listen to. So I just hope that you enjoyed this one. As I said, this is my boy RJ, and we are going to be talking about the 3D printing. So enjoy this. RJ,
I'm laughing.
what's up, my brother?
What's up? What's
So,
good?
so we're gonna talk. Let's have this discussion, man. So, Adidas is doing like this whole 3D printing thing.
Absolutely. I've heard the news.
With the runners, and it just so happens to be that you're into 3D printing.
Indeed.
So,
explain to us, for the people that don't know what 3D printing in the easy form, like
Okay.
what is 3D printing?
All right, so 3D printing is a manufacturing concept that allows the user to create a design online using a CAD software. So CAD stands for computer aided design. And so what you can do with this 3D printer is take plastic. The form of plastic is called PLA or ABS. These are the two most popular forms of plastic that you use for 3D printers. And so you take the roll of filament, this plastic filament, you put it inside of this printer, and you shoot it into this nozzle called the extruder. And so once your design is finalized, you download the file and you upload it onto this program that is associated with that printer. And so once you have the design uploaded, all you have to do is just click print and you let the printer go. And so this concept is called additive manufacturing. That is the politically correct term for 3D printing. And so for the basic user, this 3D printing in general is sweeping the nation. It is taking the manufacturing world by storm by having independent companies like mine called Dashbot, allowing for the user to go to me and develop prototypes that they would have no idea, making or trying to make or trying to design. And so the concept of 3D printing is very simple. It's literally like if you were to type up a Word document and you save that Word document. So it would be KillaKicks.docx. So .docx is the file that you would save it under. So for 3D printing, it's downloaded as a .stl file. And so with the file, this is a universal file that every 3D printer would be able to recognize and print. And so it's cool that you have the ability to design on any CAD software, download that file, and put it onto any 3D printer, disregarding brands or whatever it may be. And so that's the whole realm of 3D printing. And so now Adidas is, of course, taking the step up on the innovation edge and 3D printing soles for their runners. Now, the plastic that they're using is not ABS nor it is PLA. It is a substitute of a plastic that's infused with some sort of rubber, and that's called NinjaFlex or Filaflex. It's a very, very malleable plastic. It flexes.
Okay.
And so the ability for Adidas to make this sole possible for the runners is very exquisite. I would say it's very, very complex, but then again, it's very simple. So they use 3D printers to print out the sole and they print it layer by layer. So when the printer works, it starts off at its base layer and it builds up. So that's why it's called additive manufacturing, because it adds layers of plastic or it adds layers of rubber or whatever material it may be.
Okay.
Right. And so for Adidas, all they do is print out these soles using their specific, material. I don't know what it is. And it goes layer by layer. And then they run QC tests, so quality control tests on the durability. So they flex it, they pound on it to make sure that the pressures of whoever's using it, whether they're running or walking or just putting a shoe on, it makes it gives the feel of a real sole as if it wasn't 3D printed.
You said it's rubber, right?
Right. It's like a rubber latex compound mixture. I don't know what the compound is, but from the videos that I've seen, it's really just a mimicked replica of a regular cushion-based sole, like every other sneaker.
So what do you think that the longevity of that shoe compared to, like, let's say an Air Max that has a bubble, an air bubble? Like, what do you think that the longevity of that shoe would be, compared to like your typical Air Max that has an air inflated sole?
Right. So in comparison, or the longevity of the sole, since it is 3D printed, the user, or Adidas as the user, has the ability to change the infill amount of material that they put into the sole. So if you were to take a sole like, an Air Max that has an air bubble, of course you see the area inside of the bubble is free, and all the pressure within you walking is distributed within the sole, correct? So for the Adidas midsole, actually, that is 3D printed, and the sole as well. Adidas has a very intricate infill percentage that they put into it, so that they can change whether or not the sole needs to be firm, or if it needs to have an open area within it to distribute the amount of force that you as the user using the shoe,
Mhm.
running, walking, whatever it may be, to accommodate for the feel that you would want from it. So the longevity is by far, it surpasses anything that's manufactured not 3D printed, because that is what the X factor is. It's the ability to use as much infill, or to detract the amount of infill you use in that sole. And so that's how Adidas has the edge on 3D printing the soles. It's really genius when you look at it, because for example, in comparison to Nike, of course you know they're probably using 3D printing technology too, but
Right,
they're
right, right.
not exposing anything like that. So they might have the same edge as Adidas, but Adidas is bringing out soles, or testing out soles with the perfect combination of infill to accommodate for something that can just be readily manufactured normally.
Nike has tried to do this in the past. I've actually read an article with Nike, and this was like from 2012. They actually had an option on Nike ID, and you had like these shoes that they were like cliques.
Mhm.
And basically, what they did was that they cut out like these like triangle shapes, and they basically, when they sent you the shoe, they actually sent you a printer that took out like the holes, so you
Okay.
could actually like see like the triangle.
Okay.
And it was like the actual cleats. It was like a gym bag, and it was like another shirt.
Okay.
So it seems like this was something that Nike was trying to do, and then they didn't get like a crazy response out of it. I was able to read something about that. It was having issues with something like with the core system. I'm not sure if you need to have like some sort of licensing or something like that in order to have the ability to produce this, but it was something similar. Now with this 3D printing, now Nike has done a lot in the past with having an idea that seems like it's going to be like the future.
Mhm.
And I'll use like an example, like the Boeings. Like
Right.
everybody, like I remember when those first came out, like
Right.
everybody was like, "Yo, the Boeings, man, that's gonna be like the future, man. That's gonna
Right.
that's like the future of running." But we
Right.
actually, I mean, we saw what was the outcome of that, and it had its run for like a couple years, because we've seen a lot of basketball players was able to have their own headline shoes, like with the
Right.
Boeing
Right.
technology,
Right.
like the Vince Carters and
Yeah.
whatnot, but it didn't last too long. So like, you know, is this the future? Like, do you think that this is something that it's going to last, where basketball players are going to be able to use
3D
this
print their own
technology
shoes.
for their shoes or whatnot? Like, do you think that this is a technology that's going to last for a very long time and is going to make a crazy impact?
That's a great question. To be honest with you, 3D printing is just a step towards the future. It's a stepping stone where new technology will arise from 3D printing.
Okay.
So it's great that Adidas is using this technology now, but there will be in the next couple years something better than 3D printing, where you will be able to take a shoe that you already have, and you'll be able to transform it using another machine. There's that type of future that can go into this form of additive manufacturing or subtractive manufacturing. Um, and yeah, basketball players can buy 3D printer, buy these types of or different types of filament that's flexible to create their soles or create a custom shoe for themselves. But once the market gets flooded with 3D printers and people are all doing it, of course, big companies like Nike, like Adidas, they will take a shift in a new direction for innovation and for technology. So 3D printing may or may not die, depending on the amount of usage that people will get from these 3D printers. So, take for example, when we first got our desktop PCs back in the early 2000s, everyone wanted to buy one, but of course, no one really knew how to use it. So when people were throwing classes for computers and teaching people how to use it, what happened to the market? It just got so saturated with computers that now the dominant companies now are Apple and HP and all these other computer companies. Where's everyone else? IBM, Lenovo. Of course they're seen in the market, but when you look
Gateway.
right, gateways, like what happened to Gateway? Like that's what's going to happen with 3D printing. It's so new. It's so, innovative that people won't have a grip until they'll learn how to use it over a period of time. And so because 3D printing is seen as the new gilded age form of technology, or it's the new printing press. So when the printing press came out, post Renaissance, history wise, people were on it. They were like, yo, we need a printing press. We need to make newspapers. We need to print the Bible. That's how the Bible was, it's still the most replicated book in history. But it's because of that new factor of, wow, we can use this forever. It still applies to 3D printing, but it will soon die out because of the level of knowledge or the level of intelligence that humans have while creating new things for people to use.
Give me a couple of examples of like some 3D printing products, like aside from like the shoe, like give me like a couple of examples that are made with 3D printing.
There's so many, so many. So with Dashbot, we make prosthetics, prosthetic hands, prosthetic fingers, for people who are born with with deformities. And so that's one thing that we print out. We just print out the casing for prosthetics, and we use external material like steel bolts or iron bolts, and like flexible string to mimic tendons of your hand, stuff like that. But then you'll get into knickknacks. So like keychains with your names on them. If you're an avid Jordan fan, as many of your followers are, and runner fans, you can print out lace locks. You can print out, things that you can put on your sneaker to make them pop, make them different, make them yours. Another thing that you can print out with 3D printers are things for utilities. So for command hook strips, if you really ran out of the plastic hooks, you can print them out again. Or if you're missing a decal in your car, like if you're missing your Honda decal, or you want a red Honda decal to make your car JDM, you can print one out and form it to how a regular emblem would look like. There's countless items that you can replicate and mimic using 3D printers. Disregarding law, which patent infringement or copyright. Of course, that plays a role if you're trying to market and distribute these. But if it's for your own personal use, no one's going to come after you. And so like those are the types of items that you can print, and it's really neat because when you really think about it, a lot of the items that you have in your house, or a lot of items that you've bought from Target or from Walmart or from some toy store, you can print again and again and again as many times as you want. And so what's cool is that like the biggest competitor for 3D printing or competition, as I would say, is Legos. So Legos, every single Lego that has ever been made has a patent on it. The design, the type of material, and its ability to be lightweight and intriguing and innovative for children or for adults to use as an engineering base for their interest. So people would mimic and copy Legos on 3D printers so that they wouldn't go out and buy it. And so what's so bad, like there's of course there's pros and cons. So to give an example, Kanye West came out and said, I don't want people using 3D printers. So I don't know if you ever ran into that article or that clip. So it's
please educate me.
Oh, it's online. It really like baffled me. He said that he doesn't want people using this type of technology because it's going to take away from his business. Well, that's the pro. You're getting people who are shy, being an entrepreneur, or they're shy as to stepping outside the box. When you introduce a 3D printer to them, their eyes open up, their mind goes wild. They start to become innovative. They start to think outside the box and really have an open mind for things. They'll have the ability to not say no to things. They'll say, it's possible. I can do it. And so that's what Kanye West is afraid of, is that literally all of America or all of the world will start thinking outside of the box and start using these forms of technology to start their own companies, to make their own money, to make their own living, to live the American dream.
Wow.
And so Kanye is like, hey, you guys are taking away from it. Look, Kanye, I know you're a good guy.
Yeezus.
Yo, Yeezus. Oh,
let's call him Yeezus.
Oh, Yeezus. Yeezus loves money. He loves, being a businessman. He's a smart man. I don't knock his hustle, but for him to tell, people to say like, hey, stop using a 3D printer, that's a bad thing to say.
Word.
Because people really want to be on the edge with technology. And so, it did say in the article, and when I read about it, it was like, it's going to take away from business. It's going to take away from businesses in general. But what is healthy competition? What is business now? We don't want people running monopolies anymore, right?
True.
And so if you have that concept or that thought of mind, like, oh, I really don't want to take away from business. Like, I love being a consumer. You shouldn't think like that. You have the ability to make something of yourself, to make something in general. That's why there are a lot of these hubs and spaces around the city and at schools that are called maker spaces. there's spaces where you can make things.
Mm-hmm,
And so
and
that's
create.
right, exactly. And so you have, you know, when you're born, you have 1000% creative freedom, creative control, everything. You are the leader of your own life. You can do whatever you want. And so with these 3D printers, you know, how are you going to have Jesus tell you to not use it? Who are you to tell me to not use a 3D printer to expand my mind and knowledge?
It
Come on.
might hurt his company, Donda. I mean, you know, like Donda's supposed to be for the people, man. Like, how do you want Donda to crumble down if we are going to be using 3D printers, man?
Well, Donda, if you look at those prices, they're not for the people. You know, and I don't know his conceptual mind of business where it's like, if you can't afford his clothing, you should go out and make something of yourself so you can afford it. But you know, that does have its pros and cons of getting people to go out of their way to make more money, but then again to buy clothing that's that expensive that looks like you can make it yourself.
Well, apparently it's supposed to make you feel empowered when you wear Yeezus
Clothing that makes
clothing.
you feel empowered.
Yeah, like according to him in his interview, he said when he wants you to feel empowered and productive, you know. So this is what he. I mean, you know, this is. I mean, this is the same guy who said that he's not going to pay the whole sneaker culture and that he's not going to go. You know, he's not into like the whole for reselling. He's not for reselling, but he makes his t-shirts $250 and boots $589, and this is all depending on which color. So if you buy the brown one, it might cost you $590 with tax, and if you get a beige one, it might cost you $535. So you know,
if his concept for Donda is to have people think it empowers them, but what is a suit to a man? What is a business suit for a woman? You know, does that not make you feel empowered? Does that not make you feel that you're culturally intertwined with society? You know, his clothing, yeah, there's some nice designs, but I feel like when I wear a suit that I buy off of eBay for $100 and I get it tailored for $30 to make me look like $1 million,
yeah,
I only spent a total of $130 to make me feel empowered that I rock a suit or I wear a suit, you know, so that I can look professional, that I can look like this, you know. And like when you wear his clothing in society, you know, not too many people are keen about it, or they're not keen to his designs. They're not very accepting.
right.
And so how does that make, you know, disregarding what everyone else says, of course, you can wear whatever you want. And of course, the whole world can judge. But what does that matter to anyone? You know, and I don't know who his target market is. I don't know any of this about his business, but all I know is that if his go-to or if his slogan is to empower people when they wear his clothes, that I just feel like he is running some sort of monopoly with Donda. And you know, in a sense, it's wrong for business, but then again, who am I to judge? I'm a nobody.
Right. We are nobody. I can't afford his shirt, so I don't feel empowered.
I'd rather spend that $225 from a t-shirt, you know, putting into the stock market, or you know, donating it to a charity or something. But come on now, Yeezus.
Come on.
If you're really for the people, those prices aren't for the people.
Right.
You know, but then again, he doesn't want it to go to the wrong market either. You know, he has many fans that would love to have his items, or to love, you know, to have a pair of Yeezys, or to have a pair of, you know, Solars or Dons or whatever it may be. But come on now, for those prices, I'd rather live my life the way I want to, managing my finances and being healthy in the mind and in the pocket.
Right.
But oh man, that's crazy. He said that.
Now let's talk about pricing, okay? Okay. So, you know, we live in an era now where runners are expensive, depending on what it is. But you know, you have, you know, your typical made in New England New Balances will run you anywhere from $220 to $260.
Right.
You know, collabs, you know, especially with the Adores, you know, they're like like they're like 200 and up. You know, I just read an article right now that Barney's is having their Adores collab, and box price is $315.
I heard that too.
Okay, so now let's talk about pricing with the 3D printing. Okay. What is the cost for some of these pieces to make, and what do you I mean, because I didn't see anything as far as the pricing for that specific shoe.
Okay.
But what do you think that the price market is going to be around for these shoes, and how expensive, you know, like how expensive is it to make these products?
So different companies that do consulting or that do engineering with 3D printers for prototyping. It all depends on the amount of engineering that goes into it.
Okay.
It depends on the amount of plastic that's used or the amount of trials that they've gone through perfecting that that client's design. And so for me, when I do consulting, it's usually just the amount of plastic and the amount of time I develop a product for that person, and it ranges from about 100 plus.
Okay.
But if it's a specific item that I know I can do within a couple of minutes, then it's going to run you under $100, obviously.
Okay.
But for pricing for printers, I forgot to mention, if you own a PS4 and Xbox One, that range from 300 plus, you can buy a 3D printer for that price.
Okay.
And so a roll of filament, it depends on the amount of plastic that you would buy with that, or for that filament. It ranges from about $30 plus, and so the amount of plastic that you get is about 2.5 or about 2,500 grams or 2.5 kilograms worth of plastic. And if you're making knickknacks that are small that use about less than 100 grams of plastic, you can make over 1,000 items.
Okay.
And if you do have a sustainable business, then you can flip every product. If you were to sell 1,000 of the same keychains from one roll, you surpass your profit margin by more than 1,000+%.
A printer is going to cost you $3+.
Yeah.
You have to pay for the actual plastic roll to make the product.
Right. So if you bought one printer for $300, companies already give you a free roll of filament with it already.
Okay.
But if you wanted if you wanted a variety of colors, which there are so many colors, there are also glow-in-the-dark plastics that you can buy to put into the 3D printer.
Okay.
So if you were to buy a 3D printer for $300 and it gives you a roll, but you also wanted a red colored plastic, so that's going to run you another $30. $330 total for a package where you can design anything you want, whenever you want, and you know how to do it, whenever. And so that's the price margin for it, and it adds on to the level of creativity that you have. So if you were to buy an Xbox One, of course, everyone wants to be a gamer. Everyone wants to have the highest gamer score, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
With 3D printing, it's the complete opposite. Everyone wants to be the master designer. Everyone wants to be an engineer or a designer or a tinkerer, you can say.
Mm-hmm. And
so that's the level of intelligence that you can't put a price on.
Okay.
And that's where that's where it gets really, really neat. It's keen to everyone's style in designing. My designs might be different in taste for yours.
Okay.
And so the levels of training or skill that I've learned over the amount of years designing is different from someone else's. And so, if you held, or if you had a consulting company that dealt with 3D printing and you're going against me in terms of competition, we all have different tastes in design. So the prices will vary either way.
Okay.
And so that's where, the level of intelligence, like I mentioned, you can't put a price on it. You really can't, because it's all about style and it's all about the culture that you've learned your style in.
Okay.
So
So they could be so good at their craft that be like, listen, we know that Nike is doing this, but they're not doing it like this.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
We're going to charge you an X amount because you can't get this.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So kind of like with the whole, I think like Adidas right now, like as a company, I'm gonna be honest, they have the power to shut Nike down.
They do.
I think that they have the amount of good designers. You have Kanye, you have Pharrell, you have Pusha T, you have Big Sean. Like when Big Sean went to Adidas, I was like, oh shit! Like, this is the beginning because
of something,
of something. Because like when Reebok was trying to do it, when they had Swiss Beats and they had Rick Ross and they had it was so hard because the brand, like you still have to sell the brand.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you still have to like be able to say that this brand is cool enough for streetwear.
Yep.
Now, when you're thinking about Reeboks, Reebok has took a toll. Like it's not what Reebok used to be in the 90s.
Nope.
So
where you can get a pair of classic Reebok, was it white classics with the Philly skyline?
Yo, listen,
remember them?
Listen. The last pair of Reeboks that I could say anybody was excited for was the S. Carters.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
After Jay-Z, it was just like, okay, what? And
then what was it, 50 Cent with Reebok too, remember?
Right. But the whole like the G Unit thing, that really wasn't really, like it didn't count too much. No. But with the S. Carter's, they made an impact because he took a silhouette from Gucci sneakers, you know, that people loved and was like, you know what, this is the more affordable. It's like I told people, like when Supreme does a collaboration with another brand, best believe that that's the affordable version of whatever that, like when they do a collaboration with Undercover, understand that an Undercover t-shirt costs you $340.
Right.
With Supreme, it costs you $50.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So like, just know that you're paying for the cheaper version.
But
so,
it's still Supreme because of the culture.
Right, exactly. So with Reeboks, it's like, you know, like they took a toll and, you know, they try to get Rick Ross and they try to get, you know, like Swiss Beats, and they try to, you know, remake all these like classic silhouettes like the you know, like the Kamikazes and all this other stuff, and it just looked horrible. Like it didn't do no type of impact. But now with Adidas, you know, even though like they were number 2, but they've always held their own. You understand what I'm saying? The shell tops, the ZX. You understand? Like they I don't know what is it about Adidas, but they've always managed to kind of just hang in there.
No, and that's the amount of power that they have, is the ability to just hang.
Yeah.
Because when we think, we'll just go Nike because that's all we know.
Right.
But Adidas is always in its shadow. But then again, they're not even behind Nike. They're really just ahead of each other.
Right,
like
exactly.
1 month
it's like
Adidas,
neck and neck.
Right, exactly. And it's always been like that. People just think that Nike overshadows, you know, Adidas, but in reality, it's not, because Adidas is still a fully functional business that's still on the top of its game.
Right.
They still have signed players. They still have the amount of networking and the amount of clients, just like Nike.
And soccer, I mean,
man,
half of the apparel that you see when it comes to soccer is Adidas.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's to me, it's probably one of like the most sold, know, because it's everybody loves soccer.
Right.
You know, and especially like when you think like with the whole like, you know, World Cup, like what was it, like a year ago, like last year or something like that? Dude, I mean, it was like Adidas galore. Like every soccer jersey that you saw was Adidas.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it seemed like it was the most affordable one. Their quality was up to par. So,
Absolutely.
you know, like they're definitely not losing in that aspect. So, you know, like when you think of Adidas, it's a company that didn't die down compared to all the other you know, footwear companies from the 90s, you know, like the Fila. Like it was just so many that they died. You know what I'm saying? And the only thing that could resurrect some of these companies back is what we call now boutiques. You know, and they do these you know, they get together and they do this idea and you know, like this, you know, like this, let's do a Kith Feli shoot, you know, and then see if
everyone's hooked on Fila's again.
You know, and then see if Ronnie Fieg could like revive like this whole thing, you know. But like in terms of Adidas, like Adidas really never died down or really didn't need anybody's help. So it's like now you add a superstar like Big Sean, you know, and you got like everybody was trying to figure out what this shit was gonna look like, and then the Detroit players came and it was like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? His second shoe wasn't so big, but it's just the fact that he was able to execute such a good shoe. You know what I'm saying? Then now you got Pusha T. Now you got Pharrell. Now you got Kanye. Yo,
it's like they have a whole powerhouse.
Listen,
like
they got a
front
fucking
line.
Yo, they have the Harlem Globetrotters.
They do.
Listen, like they have the fucking all-star. And it's like now, you know, if you think of in terms what Reebok was trying to do, yo, they're like so short. Adidas took their idea and surpassed them like by like $1 trillion. You know, so now we have Nike. Nike had the ability of locking the shit down with you know, with Kanye, and then he didn't have the creative, you know, control, whatever the fuck it was that he wanted, you know, and it didn't go through. So now you have Adidas. But, you know, Adidas is like, now with this 3D technology, it's like, now it's like you smacking motherfuckers in the face, basically.
No, for sure. And like what's really neat about Adidas is that, we mentioned that they had the ability to just hang. But to be honest with you, that ability to hang, they have secret weapons that they use, just like Nike. And that's why they always go head to head, because you have these elaborate amounts of designers,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
X factors that are beyond our control to even think about.
Yeah.
And Nike as well. I can't knock Nike's hustle. I love Nike. I love Adidas. For me, it's really, if I really look at a company and I see that they're still hanging after X amount of years, I know that they're both doing something right. They're going in the right direction because they have their own flavor. They have their own taste.
When I read last year that I think it was like 4 of Nike's top designer was going to Adidas, I was like, game fucking over.
Right.
And you could see it. Like, you go to, I went to the Adidas store in Manhattan. I was like,
right down to Soho, right?
And I was like, what the fuck, yo? Like, listen, their shoes, their silhouettes are so different compared to what they was doing a couple years ago.
Their main pushes a couple years ago were only their shell tops.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
but now
that was
it's
just
like
a classic shoe, but they were too OD on them. So that's why they're like, you know what? We have the ability to shake things up.
Right.
We have the ability to compete. So they do it. They just do it.
Right. And now we have this whole 360 boost, and all this. I mean, what's next? So it's good to see that, but it's like, that's why I definitely wanted to have you like on the podcast and kind of educate people, with this whole 3D, with the whole 3D printing thing. Absolutely. Because it's like, you kind of want to try to figure out, okay, is this what Adidas going to do to kind of like, put the fucking foot on Nike's neck and say, there's competition now, so now, is there a way to elevate 3D printing? Like, can you make something better than what Adidas is doing now?
Absolutely. So to go back to that whole topic, Adidas just being even associated with 3D printing is a marketing stunt. And their ability to expand on this type of technology is already genius. And so that's why they know that 3D printing will die. They know the lifespan of this technology within their manufacturing a segment of their company. And so to be honest with you, they are only using it because it's in now, in this time.
Right.
And for technology, there's always a time or a lifespan for technology.
Right.
So for them to go into 3D printing and showcase it now rather than later, of course it's going to die down later. But say that they were going to announce this move next year. What would happen next year? There would be something better, and then Nike would pick up on that something that's better. And then
right.
And to be honest with you, Nike or Adidas, when they announced that they were doing 3D printed soles and they came out with that video, testing out the product, not only did they just go after Nike's neck, but they went after Under Armour. They went after all of these sportwear companies, and they're just like, "What are you guys doing? We got 3D printers, running right now, doing tests on midsoles that can be customizable for our users. What are you doing?" And what was these other companies' responses? Really nothing. Because they're like, "Oh man, Adidas pulled the trigger on 3D printing. Now everyone else is awaiting or doing research on something that would be newer."
Right.
So that's where people have that edge on Adidas. But then again, Adidas is reigning over this field of innovation and technology.
Right. Because I could even listen, if I was at Adidas right now and I had this technology, I would take it 10 steps ahead.
Right.
When you think about these athletes, they have these arm wrist, they have stuff for their ankles, so many ankle sprains and all this other stuff. You can make 3D printing rubbers that is going to sustain, the bones like better than, I mean, because all they have is just like insulated cushion.
Right.
With the 3D printing, like, it seems like they could just like, like they could even like attack it like with that. Like, okay, so now we're going to sell, sportswear to actually like protect, like, in case if you're going to get like, if you're going to like sprain like your knee or your arm or your wrist, like you could either like sell, which I don't see any company right now selling
that.
You're
going to hear it from me first. So everyone that's listening to this podcast, just know, I'm going to shoot KillaKicks my email and everything and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Adidas is taking 3D printing, not just printing soles, but they're gonna have the ability to use different materials to print out, to develop files that they can sell to consumers who have 3D printers, and they're gonna be able to showcase or have their athletes design their own and sell the files, not the complete item. They're
Right,
gonna
right,
sell the files and have specific instructions as to what materials to use, at what
right.
percentage, at what speed, and you can develop. If going back to sports equipment, you can print out flexible knee braces.
Yeah.
You can print out flexible ankle braces. You can print out, for basketball players, they have those arm sleeves or
Right,
armbands
right,
around
right,
their
right,
bis and
right,
triceps.
right.
Players can develop with Adidas or whoever they're signed with. They can develop a design, and so these designers will actually finalize them for them, and then they'll be able to just sell the file to the users. And once the user is done, it automatically disappears, so that there is no form of replication after
Right,
they get it.
right.
So if you're really online and say, "Hey, I really want to make this," then it's like this, like Pharrell Bape Adidas, lace lock, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, here's the material. These are the colors that you use for it. I buy the file, and it gets sent to me. And once I download it, and once I give the go, like there's separate coding or whatever that goes
Right.
into these files disappearing. But once it's finally made, you no longer have the file.
So you can't duplicate.
Exactly.
Another company
Right.
cannot
and
come
you,
and duplicate it.
you heard it here first. That is the take on technology, because I've seen it, and that's the route that I have my company going into, is because selling files, like how people cheat in high school and they buy papers online. You know what I mean? Same concept applies for files, where it's design purpose. And so with these sportswear companies, Adidas, Nike, they already know what to do in terms of technology, not making the product for the consumer, but having the instructions to sell. Literally, when you buy a toy and it has instructions, that was useless.
Yeah.
But now look how technology's turned, where you sell the instructions and people are willing to go and make these items for a specific price. That is the product. The instructions are the product that Adidas might go into and sell after they have booming sales for these 3D printed shoes. That's where technology will go. And you heard it here first. Like that's how crazy technology will be. And so that's the X factor. That's the innovative edge that Adidas has on every one of these other companies.
And that could become, a mega billion-dollar company. Because just imagine you're a basketball player, you get drafted to like the Washington Wizards.
Right.
And the Washington Wizards is like, we have this 3D printing, we have our own, protective gear that's going to protect you X amount that this team is not able, because you understand what I'm saying? Like, yo, it's fucking
and
crazy.
To be honest with you, I would be shocked if, people from Adidas or Nike's headquarters listened to this podcast and was like, who the hell is this dude? They're like spitting out our secrets.
I'm gonna say AJ, no.
It's RJ, you dummy. What's wrong with you? Look at you. You messed up.
Listen.
Look at you.
Listen, I'm gonna say RJ was the innovator behind this, because I'm gonna tell you this, like what you're doing right now, and this is why I wanted to get you a part of this. What you're doing right now, and I feel like this is gonna be the future.
It is.
This
we're living in it now.
Yeah, when I saw that video that Adidas did, and like when the machine was like just like pounding like on that rubber. And it would just like bounce back.
Right.
Like I know a lot of runners. I know people that run 5Ks. I know
all the marathons.
Philly,
New York Marathon, everything.
Everybody tells me, every single person tells me that Nike is the worst shoe to run in.
Wow.
Everybody tells me that they prefer Brooks
or Asics.
Not certain Asics.
Okay.
But majority of them, I don't know why. People can't really give me like a defined answer, but they prefer Brooks over Nike.
Okay.
Imagine with the 3D printing, and for what I've seen through the video, like imagine being able to have this shoe that you could have this same shoe for an X amount of years. You could run in the same shoe for an X amount of
right.
And it's like you have the ability, because you have this shoe, you have the ability to like surpass somebody like running, opposed to like, like somebody who's using like a pair of Brooks or like somebody who's using like a regular pair of Nikes. Like you have like this 3D printing shoe that gives you the ability to run a little bit faster than them.
Well, hear me out on this. Another thing that I know for a fact that innovators within these companies will do is they will develop these shoes, sell them, but what's cool is that if you take an old pair of 99 white cement 4s, what's the first thing people notice? The crumbling midsoles, right?
Yeah.
But what about the uppers? Aren't they like 9, 10 out of 10?
Right.
You take runners and you see the uppers and you see that they're in immaculate condition, but the soles are run down, everything. Imagine if you had this concept design of printing out your own soles from buying that file from Adidas, where you can literally print it out, slide and lock it on the shoe, and go on your way.
And bam.
Imagine that.
And bam.
And that is where technology will go. And that literally will be the first product that will be consumer controlled, not company controlled. Consumers will want these files. They will want what they will produce. And that's where supply and demand comes in. And it's literally going to be more demand than supply, because the supplies are going to be there. It's literally one file that millions and millions of people can really just download. And what do you know? There's this like the slide and lock mechanism that Adidas or Nike or whoever has already in place or is patent pending, where they'll just let the file go online. Someone will download, they'll print out the file. What do you know? All you need is this, or all you need is that. Slide and lock on your sole. What do you know? You have another pair of Adidas runners or XYZ runners, brand new, because the uppers are great. All you did was put them in the machine, get out the dirt or whatever, but the sole is already mangled, and it's like you got chips and glass in it. You can just print out another sole and slap it right on.
Because the sole is what matters.
Exactly.
The sole is what matters. I mean, you could take care of a shoe for like years. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
No leather scratches, no nothing.
Exactly.
But the sole,
all right.
You know, without that sole, it's like, what the fuck I'm supposed to do with this upper?
Exactly.
You know, that's why a lot of people get so many of these, you know, like they buy like these OG, you know, 2000 breads, you know, and they get the sole swap.
Right.
You know, because the sole is fucked up, you know? So, you know, again, we're giving away too much fucking ideas.
But to be honest with you, that's why, you know, I like doing interviews like this, because I'm able to educate the people who really have no idea what's really going on.
I'm extremely happy that I was able to have you part of this, you know, small interview. You know, if let's say somebody is interested in 3D printing, let's just say we get a listener who has his own like sneaker or idea, you know, lace type of company, you know, where they make lace locks, and yo, you know what the fuck, I want to make some 3D printing shit. Right. Where could they reach you at?
They can reach me at dashbot.co@gmail.com. That is my company email. I check it every day. Okay. And so you shoot me an email, we can work back and forth. I'm based here in Philadelphia. And so shoot me an email, and then we can just get to consulting after that. And that's how you guys can reach me. And so on Instagram, same thing. You can follow me on Instagram. You can check out the different amount of files or objects that, you know, we do print or do consulting with. And so that's just at dashbot.co. So it's dashbot.co.
Cool. I hope you enjoyed that fucking Kanye West. Fucking Jesus. Yo, that's the second time his name comes up in my podcast, and like the conversation, like it's like a 6-minute conversation about fucking Kanye. That's powerful, man. That's just to show you how important, man, this guy is to the culture, man. I just don't, you know, I don't get it, yo. Like, man, like I don't even want to get into this. I don't even want to get into Kanye again, because that'll be another 15 minutes or so. But I will say this before I go into my next guest. If you would have asked me when College Dropout came out that Kanye was going to be such an iconic figure to, I'm not going to say the hip-hop culture, because I kind of saw the patterns, you know, that he was going to be something great. But if you would have told me that he was going to be an iconic figure to the footwear culture, to apparel, I would have not have believed it. There's no way that I would have believed that one single man would just be the talk of the town. Like, one man would be every time he drops something, it's like, you know, everybody's running around like a chicken without a head, you know, like everybody's just running around crazy. I wouldn't I would not have believed it, man. It's just crazy how much of an impact, man, the guy has. Is fucking crazy. So anyway, on to the next one. I had the pleasure of doing an interview with Jeff Carvalho. Carvalho. Damn, I hope I'm not saying that shit wrong. I'm sorry, Jeff. If you're listening to this, I'm truly sorry. But man, it was a real pleasure, man, just sitting down and speaking to this guy. In case if you don't know who he is the editor for the blog called Highsnobiety, and Highsnobiety is a blog site that just does a lot of content on a lot of things, whether it be music, whether it be footwear, whether it be furniture, just a lot of stuff. Kind of think of it like Complex, but more upscale. So it was amazing meeting this guy. He did a lecture at P's and Q's. P's and Q's is one of my local boutiques here in Philadelphia, and they sell a lot of brands such as Publish. Actually, they had a Publish lecture not so long ago, but they sell brands like Publish. They sell brands like like Nudie Jeans, famous Naked and Famous, Baldwin Jeans. I mean, they sell a lot of stuff, including books. I would suggest that you visit their website. That's psandqs.com, and they have a lot of dope stuff, including their runners. And like I said, that's P's and Q's. That's PS and then qs.com. So please visit the website, man, and trust me, you're gonna find something there that you're gonna like. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Jeff, and it's pretty cool, man, to sit down with somebody who's kind of paved the way, man, for some of the stuff that's being done now, such as this podcast. And it always fascinates me to listen to people's stories of how they started, and just get their opinion, like on the culture and on certain things. So the guy has a lot of history. Hopefully maybe in the future we can have a very long podcast, but nonetheless, man, I was definitely happy with this. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and let's get into this interview with my homie Jeff.
All right. First of all, nice to meet you. Thanks a lot, man, for giving me the opportunity to do this small interview with
Sure.
you. So back in 2007, you started a podcast called the Weekly Drop.
05, yeah.
2005? Okay, and that was
Wow.
with Rob Hebler.
You're going back.
Yeah, and how important was it to be a part of the sneaker culture back then? And because now it seems like the podcast is a thing, and the culture has evolved. So, how important was it for you to actually be a part of that?
So the Weekly Drop came out of me having listened to a podcast called Twit, which is This Week in Tech, and it was a big technology podcast. And it's something I'll talk a lot today about, which is platform. And I'm really obsessed with this idea of like, what can you do as an individual? Like, I wanted to get into the culture, right? I was a big collector. I was writing for magazines like Sneaker Freak. I was writing from stuff in Boston, but this is prior to, it was like at that point where blogs were there, but like the major companies didn't really get what new media was, and the cool shops were still the only place to really find that stuff. And being in Boston, there weren't that many inroads into the culture, right? So for me, the idea of the podcast when it first happened, because it exploded 10 years later, as you know, right? Now it's crazy. Right. And for me, I was like, okay, this may be a vehicle that we can do something around. Right. And I had written for Sneaker Freaker issue 2 or 3, and when I received my copy, I noticed that there was a story in the magazine from another guy in Boston, a guy named Rob Hepler, as you know. And I was like, what are the chances of like a dude in Boston, 2 guys in Boston writing for the same, unknown sneaker zine coming out of Australia? So hunted Rob down, and as soon as I met Rob and he opened his mouth, I was like, this is a guy I need to do a show with, because he's ridiculously passionate. The shit that's coming out of his mouth is insane. but most importantly, like he could talk. And it wasn't my viewpoint; it was very different. So when we got in front of the microphone, I talked to Rob. I said, "Listen, there's this thing called podcasting. It's kind of like radio. You deliver it online, and what's different about it is that you don't dial in. You kind of have to, download it and subscribe to it." And we did that first episode. And I think both Rob and I at that point, and then Frank the Butcher, who joined us much later, we were all looking to get out of our day jobs. We were all looking to figure out what we could give back to the culture. And podcasting was that platform. So, what's quite crazy is that at that time, nobody really knew what podcasting was, and certainly nobody was paying as much attention to it as major media is today. And we were just super lucky that people listened, that it got out there, and guys like Bun B were fans, and he was one of our earliest supporters, inviting us to New York to record a show, and guys like DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill were also hearing the show, and that and again, it's all about that platform of what podcasting did for us. It was what we used to get people to hear our perspective, and I think we all three of us feel insanely lucky about that.
Now, Rob was in charge of the concept dunks, the lobsters, and
The first lobster, right?
the first lobster and the Coralines, right? I mean,
Sure.
how big was that? To actually that was the guy that you was sharing the podcast with, and then he does these two huge shoes who are now considered grails, for many people.
Sure. I mean, you should talk to Rob about that because he'll certainly talk to you about it. But I couldn't be happier for him getting the opportunity. Again, the fact that it's not to say we came from nothing, but we were just fans, and we're just very lucky that people listen to us, and opportunity opens doors.
Cool. So how has information, the sharing information, has changed from back then, and how hard is it now to write content on certain products, because we live, the market is flooded. So how do you choose, what type of product you want to write on?
Yeah, if you look at what we used to cover, it was incredible. I mean, we still do cover a lot, but it was very different back then. It was at a very fast pace. We were competing with other guys. We were competing with other blogs and websites. So for us, we just wanted to keep up. I think today when we look at our business, it's much more about being able to pick and choose what we think to be the very best. And the unfortunate truth is that we can't cover everything today as we once did. So what we tend to do, and again, I'm a bit older, so we tend to rely on very good staff, people that we have that are really in the culture, that are paying attention to the culture, quite frankly, younger than me, and we rely heavily on them making decisions. I can't tell you how many times we put up something, I'm like, that shit is whack, but it resonates with our audience, and I'm wrong, and that's fine. That's cool. I learn something new every day.
Okay. Recently, there was a collaboration with Ronnie Five for the anniversary for Highsnobiety, and now this is the second collaboration with Ronnie Five, right?
Yes.
Because the first one was the Joe Light Threes.
Long time ago.
Right. So,
Do you have them?
I wish.
I don't have them either.
I wish. But how why Puma and not Asics, especially with the whole 25th anniversary, everything that's going on with Asics? How come Puma was that actually brand that you wanted to choose?
That relationship really was, Ronnie and my partner David are very, very close. I'm very close to Ronnie as well. We kind of grew up together and came up together in this business. I remember Ronnie before he started Kith, when he was still at David Z, and he was just this incredibly ambitious guy that wanted to just push, and that's why Kith exists. Ronnie, we put a lot of trust in Ronnie to help us put that shoe together, and he felt that was the right road for us. That's not to say that we won't do an A6 later.
Cool. So, man, thank you, man. I definitely give you thank you for this time for me giving you this interview, and hopefully next time we'll have a longer one. Thank you,
man.
All right, man. So I hope that you enjoyed that interview with Jeff. Real good guy, great guy, real humble, man. That lecture that he gave at P's and Q's was amazing. Probably one of my favorite lectures that I've attended to, and I love, man, what that store does for the community, man. Philadelphia has a lot of college students that's looking right now to get into the the culture, man. Whether it be writing blogs, creating apparel, wanting to get into the footwear, like, there's a lot of that stuff going on here in the city. So to have a store like P's and Q's, you know, that's not something that you see every day. I can't go into a store and they're going to say, hey, we're going to invite such and such, and they're going to give a lecture of, how they got into the business. That's not that you see. That's not something that you see at every store. So it's definitely dope to see P's and Q's doing that type of work for the community. So yeah, man, feel free to download my free app, KillaKicks. It is available for iPhone and Android. I'm excited for my next podcast. I cannot say what it is because it's not 100% confirmed. I want to say it's like 80% confirmed. But once it is 100% confirmed and once the recording is done, I will be doing my announcement via Instagram. So please follow me on my Instagram. That's Killa_Kicks. And yeah, man, I hope that you enjoy this. I hope that you have a safe week, a safe weekend. I hope that if you had a bad day, that this at least made it a little bit more easier for you. And I just hope, man, that you enjoy this, man. So till next time, everybody, peace out, son.